The following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Introducing first, the ace that runs the place, Sam Tate. And his tag team partner, Rob is Warren.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is scheduled for one fall back for the fourth installment, and the fourth installment in January of 2023. That's right, it's still Rumble season. You wouldn't know it from what we're watching on TV, though, as WWE gets ready for one of its biggest pay-per-views of the year, one of my favorites, one of our favorites, at least spiritually. Let's bring in our host with the most, the ace that runs the place. What's up, Sam Tate? What's going on, my friend?
Hello. It's been a wild month. I've been super slammed myself with hard game duties and, a bunch of crazy life events. So hopefully this is coming to you guys on Wednesday. I think Wednesday is going to be the normal upload time for this podcast. It seems like it gives us a good buffer from, the important events that happen on weekends. Raw is on Mondays. Rampage is on Wednesdays, right? Or is it Dynamite? It's Dynamite.
Yeah. Rampage Friday, Dynamite Wednesday. Yeah. Feels like there's so much going on all the time. Go ahead.
Right. So there's so much to keep track of. And that's what we started with this podcast with, was so much that's going on that it's tough to keep up. But Wednesdays looks like it's going to be the regular upload time for this podcast. Next week's might be a little delayed because I'm going to be at Alexis Park all weekend for the Hero League Championship of the My Hero Academia card game. I'm part of the broadcast team, so I'm going to be working all weekend on that, which means I'm going to be watching Royal Rumble a little late, unfortunately.
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, we've been prepping for 3 weeks to see the thing, and now, ironically, you're going to have to see it late. And, I have a normal life with a normal job, too, so I suppose I'll be catching it just an hour or two late. You're going to have to wait several days, huh?
Yeah, I think I'm going to end up probably watching it. Hopefully we can watch it together like Monday night or like Tuesday, because you want to catch the Raw after while it's fresh, because the Raw after is going to be chock full of spoilers. So I'm hoping we still get around to it in a timely manner, but this is part of why we made this podcast, because we don't imbibe wrestling content the same way we did 10, 20 years ago, right? It's a lot of it's highlight shows. A lot of it is getting the seeds planted from social media and then going and searching out the stuff that is worthwhile, rather than just watching a show front to back, or at least that's been my experience. How about for you?
Oh no, 1,000,000%. There's so much going on in my real life, and there's so many different things pulling my attention away, that as much as I absolutely adore professional wrestling and follow it religiously through services like What Culture on YouTube and Bleacher Report is where I get all my articles all the time. I follow it to the best of my ability. But no, man, I don't even have cable. How on earth do I get to sit there and absolutely watch every moment of it? I respect the storytelling, and I do my best to keep up with it through the means I discussed. But, life is busy. Life is busy. And so if you guys want to make sure we are able to do this a lot more freely and focus on pro wrestling, because you want us to get into the nitty gritty of all of our true trains of thought, please, friends, like what you're listening to, share what you're listening to, subscribe what you're listening to, and, bring a friend. Let them know that we've got opinions and we love to talk all about this awesome medium. Sorry, couldn't help it. Got to get some plugs in early, right?
Yeah, I have gotten some nice feedback, a lot of similar opinions so far, but I need those opinions in the comments, guys. We need that. Like, I love that you guys are messaging me on Discord and on Facebook and stuff, but like for the algorithm, we need this on Facebook. And to encourage that engagement just a little bit, I think I'm going to move the trivia section to the front of the podcast. So that way, if you guys want to play along, you don't have to sit through the entirety of the podcast. You can put your answers in the comments down below. Are you ready for some trivia, Warren?
Hold on, let me get my thinking cap. And yeah, I just literally put something on my head to fill the void. Let's do this, my guy. What is this week's trivia?
Okay, so this one is fairly simple. I'm going to keep it pretty easy. They don't all have to be brain busters. But this week's trivia question is, what does STF stand for? The submission hold STF, what does it stand for? I'm going to give a little buffer here. I'm going to keep talking just to let people type in their responses down below in case they'd like to play at home and they didn't feel like pausing this podcast. But this has been enough time. I think this is an easy one.
God, I hope it is. I think it's a step over toe hold face lock.
That's correct. That's exactly it. That's
Sweet.
exactly what it is. I thought maybe you might get the toe hold part wrong, but yep.
It's a strangely worded hold. It reminds me, as far as strangely worded holds are concerned, do you remember Terry and Dory Funk's step over toe hold with he just grabs the guy's ankle and just keeps walking over their leg? You know what I'm talking about, when they're prone on their back? I mean, I've never seen anybody else do the move, right? It's distinctly Funk, and it absolutely does not look to any uneducated mind that would hurt. But have you ever grabbed somebody? Have you ever grabbed your own foot and just kept twisting and twisting and twisting? Whatever. But yeah, it probably hurts more than the actual step over toe hold face lock that we would see from, say, a certain one who cannot be seen, like Mr. John Cena. We would whine all the time about how he would lock that in, right? Not even pulling. He would just kind of close his forearms over the guy's temples and just sit there, right, Winnie?
We used to call it the step over pillow lock. He's got such big arms, and they look soft. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're still muscles, but it would, in the realm of professional wrestling, it would look like this guy is just resting their head on these giant mounds of mashed potatoes in his arm.
Man, that is my top guy right there. If your forearms can be confused with Idaho Golds or Yukon Golds, I don't know my potato brands and types, but then hey, that's the guy for me. Launch that guy to the moon. Good job with the trivia.
Yeah, it's fucked up because STFU is such a great name for the guy whose finishing move was the FU. Why he started doing it why he started doing it when he started doing it, and then they transitioned to the attitude adjustment was all kind of whack. But yeah, that's your trivia for this week. The STF stands for step over toe hold face lock.
Can I ask why that came to mind here as we're entering Rumble season? What made that be the simple lob to throw my way this week?
Well, I think that when it comes to wrestling names, like names for wrestling moves, I guess, it's a lot of it's pretty arbitrary, but I do think it adds something to it. I think it adds something to the medium when it comes to storytelling to know exactly what a move is supposed to be doing, what a move is derived from, because a lot of it is stuff that people can argue about. A lot of it is things where, if you wanted to, if it has a signature name, like the Styles Clash, what is the Styles Clash? It is like a forward facebuster inverted tombstone, it's, you could come up with a bunch of different names for stuff. So I think that cataloging names for moves is really cool. And as time goes on, they become less important.
I was just going to say the Styles Clash was the Crash Landing, because Crash Holly did it first, right? For all I know, AJ Styles started doing that as a tribute to Crash.
But that's still a signature name for the move. We want the technical name, not the Tazmission. It's the Kaja Hajime.
It would be interesting to find out what that move is technically called. Absolutely.
The most famous one actually is, do you know about Scott Steiner and the Hurricane Rana?
Sure.
He used to get really upset at all the announcers who would call it a Hurricane Rana because it's not. It's a Frankensteiner.
Amen. That's his tagline. Sure. Now I only see Frankensteiner used to describe the Hurricane Rana performed from the back, right? Some people call that an inverted head scissor takedown.
That's a poison Rana.
See, in Japan, it's a poison Rana, especially. But No, I've heard Frankensteiners off and on for some of the different performers who like to do that one, like Pac. But I digress. It's always interesting naming moves. It seems like it goes from region to region, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, and that's just it, right? Like a lot of it is because they come from different countries of origin, different martial arts of origin. There's all kinds of stuff. So I think that move names are cool, and I knew it wasn't going to be super tough. And I thought that when moving the trivia to the beginning, it's nice to start with some softballs, and it was just on my mind.
Softballs. It's almost baseball season, but that is the wrong topic for now. Is it even Rumble season though? It feels like when I am catching up with what's going on the show, it's about all of this fantastic drama around the bloodline. Sure. There is buzz.
The big buzz was the return of The Undertaker on TV. I caught that segment.
You know, I loved the way that was executed, to be completely honest with you. And somebody, of course, blew up Twitter immediately. It was like, what a beautiful pass of the torch moment to Bray, you know, with Undertaker showing up in American Badass, which is exactly how I hoped he would be presented in any, you know, post-retirement appearances.
But if he was going to pass the torch to Bray, shouldn't he have been in his supernatural gimmick? Like, are we saying now that we have American Badass Bray Wyatt instead of supernatural phenom Bray Wyatt? Like, is that what's going on? We get to see street clothes Bray Wyatt now?
I mean, that is what they've presented to us off and on these last several weeks, minus the appearance on the Firefly Funhouse, making the return on SmackDown.
I saw that too. I was like, why do we have the Firefly Funhouse back? I thought we were done with this garbage.
Well, and that's the thing. Bray, we're not sure what Bray is up to. I feel like
we never are.
I feel like this arc has been very much about him trying to be himself, the real himself, right? And then he's got this corner of his mind called Uncle Howdy, who is challenging him to be honest with himself, that he's still a monster and that he's still like a mess. And then you've got LA Knight, who's kind of the voice of all the naysayers out there who maybe don't believe in whatever Bray wants to be. And he's just going to and his way into
what terrible catchphrases.
I'm sorry, with all due respect, I actually really enjoy LA Knight personally. I know. I think he's clean in the ring. I think he's got well, I mean, I'm going to expect you to disagree with me, but I enjoy that he's getting a chance to work with Bray to start, because I think, as some have said, there's so many different ways that we can continue this, but maybe I'll focus on the first tangent I was trying to make. Like, Bray is Knight is the naysayer, and now Bray and all of his alter egos are creeping through his sanity, and we're beginning to remember like how really evil, twisted, and eclectically like wild this guy is. And I think the match on Saturday is going to be the Pitch Black match. I think it's what it's called, Pitch Dark match or whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of fuckery.
They're going to dim the lights so you can't tell how bad they are at wrestling again.
It's going to be very presentational. There's zero doubt about that. It's going to be closer to those, you know, pre-taped matches we were seeing a lot during the pandemic that can be super successful, but it's really going to be interesting to see what specifically happens. I'm crossing my fingers that the Fiend shows up, just because you know how much I love that character.
So what I want to extrapolate from this current iteration, I guess, of Bray Wyatt is that Bray Wyatt wants to be a guy who wrestles as Bray Wyatt. He wants to be a guy who just wrestles by his own name, like John Cena, like a Randy Orton, like a Hulk Hogan, where, you know, of course, like kayfabe name, you know, but like he doesn't have to have a gimmick. He doesn't have to have a persona. He doesn't have to have this character. But that's what everyone knows and actually loves him for. That's what got him to be successful in the first place. And I think that like a lot of his success, so to speak, has been based off stuff that like weren't necessarily his idea. You know, they were tainted ideas by someone else's influence. And so I think he what I want to extrapolate from the story is that he wants to like cleanse himself of all that outside influence and present to you himself what he wants to present and the way he wants to present it, but something keeps stopping him, or like the fear that the fans won't accept him to just be, I don't know, basically Husky Harris again. Like if he's just a guy wearing fucking leather tights and boots, are you really going to cheer for him?
Well, at this stage, going back to a Husky Harris was kind of an intriguing topic to bring up later in our discussion as we break down our true predictions for this year's Royal Rumble. Yeah. It's funny that you allude to Husky Harris as a persona, but and I like where you're coming from. Yes, I love this notion that he's cleansed himself of the outside influences or the filters through which his brain and his ideas have been, presented to us over the years. It's a very believable take. I think what's truly happening is that they're just slow burning their way into Bray's psychological explosion, and we really get to see these personas of his get brought back. I think I'm still not dead on the notion of a new family, right? New characters coming out of the woodwork to kind of do his bidding. I think the Alexa Bliss teases will pay off at some point, even as soon as this Saturday.
It just all feels so disconnected. It feels like they're trying to turn a new page and then they go back to the old stuff and then, then they repackage it and they go back to the old stuff and then they act like it's going to be something new and detached, but actually it's all still there. Like, I just don't get it.
I fully agree with you there. I don't often do that, but I do fully agree that it's been extremely disjointed, and you can't tell sometimes if the supernatural is getting turned down to 1 or 2, and then it's ratcheted all the way up to 10 or 12, usually by the end of the promo. But here I am going to be the super fan of Bray. I loved the Firefly Funhouse return. I loved all the different nuanced nods to the path to this point that Bray has been on, even though it's just as hard to pinpoint his direction as ever. I can empathize with how those who are fed up are fed up. But there is something about Bray Wyatt, in my humble opinion, that reminds me of The Undertaker and Mankind at their best, squidged together. And I'm okay with finding out how deep the rabbit hole goes with the guy. I have been for years. I like a talker. I like a weaver. I like somebody who can fill syllables, who doesn't necessarily have to commit to exposing the entire path of a storyline. And I'm gonna be the fanboy who's excited for Saturday and praying, honestly, that we just get a little bit more out of Bray in ring, and we start moving this thing forward, and we start getting to know the guy more.
It's the same as it's always been. We just need more substance. It's all
weird.
Hoopla. Yeah. It's all vague. It's all
smoke and mirrors.
It's the kind of thing where like you watch TV and they play the pronoun game all the time on TV, where they don't say, look, it's the bad guy by name. They say, oh no, it's him. And then it fades to black and like all this shit where it's like contrived vagueness for the sake of not having any fucking actual information to give you. Not having any actual substance, because if they gave you substance too early, it would cheapen the rest of it, right? Like it would ruin, there's one of my favorite games to play actually is to take a scene from a movie and change like one piece of dialogue to like end the movie immediately. Like in the Star Wars movies when they're like in being held up in the giant stadium on Geonosis or whatever it's called with the Star Wars Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Like there's a point where Obi-Wan could just look at Luke and go, hey, you see that Jango Fett guy up there? All the clones are like modeled after him. He's with the clone army. And then they could all go, oh, so the clones are on the bad guy's side. And then the movie's just fucking over. Like all you'd have to do is spot Jango Fett in the crowd.
I like it. I mean, that's how I felt about I don't know if this will really apply. Maybe I shouldn't even try. But what I don't know about you, but the Harry Potter films, film 3, The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh yeah.
It always drove me nuts that through all of the intrigue of the characters, and they go so far as to introduce the Marauders map and discuss Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prawns, right? They never explicitly say in the film, for those of you who didn't read the books, that Harry's dad, spoiler alert, is Prawns, and Mooney is Professor Lupin, spoiler alert, and Padfoot is Sirius Black, spoiler alert. And
they really don't drop that knowledge anywhere.
They don't do it in the movie.
That's like a major part of the. Okay, yeah, continue.
And that's kind of what we're missing in wrestling right now with Bray is whom are we building to? Are we building to a new Bray? Are we building to a Fiend? Are we building to the Eater of Worlds? Are we building to a family? The closest thing we really get is that Alexa Bliss seems to be involved, engaged, and getting indoctrinated, which is fine, dude. She performed that character great until Lily came around. That was like the worst
part. Like that was when people started booing the Fiend off TV because of, like, it's not necessarily her fault. I'm not saying it's Alexa Bliss was necessarily a bad part of it, but typically you want to distance yourself from the negative versions of things, especially when it comes to wrestling and it comes to like live TV. Because like when she showed up during the Randy Orton match and like started coughing up like black blood and shit, like, and she was just like on top of a box and like, I don't know, man, it just didn't hit for me. Like I'm a fan of Alexa Bliss, and I'd like to watch Alexa Bliss. I don't want to watch Alexa Bliss when she's the fucking ragdoll or whatever, when she's evil girl, Sister Abigail.
Well, you want to talk about the filter of, be in front of the presentation. I think Alexa Bliss was basically inseminated with the Wyatt characters because they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know what else to do with Fiend. I mean, that was literally like the last supernatural thing that they did before Bray's initial release, right?
It's really sad because naming her as like Sister Abigail, which I don't even know if they officially did, like that's how vague it was,
right?
But it's pretty easy to tie her to that role as a female associated with the character, right? But like that was supposed to add substance. That was the most substance they've added to the Fiend character, was giving him an accomplice who is Sister Abigail or some surrogate of. And at the same time, like, it just fell flat on its face because they keep doing these gimmicky, overbooked matches with no substance in the match. Or they do some really stupid fucking ending. I'm telling you, bro, a bad ending can ruin any good match. It doesn't matter. It could be a 10-star fucking Dave Meltzer literally pissing in his own mouth how fucking good the match is. And a bad ending will bring it down to a 4 at best.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, I'm totally behind you on that one. I mean, that's most Royal Rumble matches themselves in a nutshell. Just for fun, shoot from the hip. Give me one match that was just so strong up until the ending and what ruined it for you. I know you've got at least 4 examples. Maybe I'll drag it out for a minute in case you need it, or you got one.
Well, so that's the thing. A lot of them are forgettable. A lot of them are like JBL matches. If you go back and you watch JBL's title run, which I have been very critical of in the past.
Sure.
I tell people all the time, JBL made me turn off the TV. He made me stop watching SmackDown for like the solid year because the TV was not entertaining. But since the network has come out, I've gone back and I've watched basically every wrestling pay-per-view, at least like in the background while I'm, working on other stuff. And his matches are not terrible. His matches tell, relatively the same story in different ways, and that's a lot of wrestling, and that's fine. But the finishes are just Orlando Jordan runs outside and hits someone with a suitcase, or, some other member of the cabinet runs a distraction, and it's stuff you see with the Bloodline. The bloodline
Yeah.
will ruin a perfectly good TV match because it just always has to end with ref distraction, third guy distraction, second guy gets back up after being thwarted and manages to cheat. And it's like, wrestling is the same so often.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It's a paint by numbers business. And almost literally, if you've got numbers at your back, then you're going to have a natural advantage because referees are, just straight silly and stupid and fall for every trick in the book. And yeah, I had a feeling you're going to tie in that excellent match between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens on SmackDown a couple weeks back, where it ended with the bloodline getting involved to thwart Sammy's opportunity to prove he was better than the number one contender. Mm-hmm. That's all that was.
And all I'm looking for is a unique take. All I'm looking for is to not do it like ad hoc ad nauseum, like every single week, and to just do it in a unique way. Like, one of the things where, like the poison mist, right? Like the spitting the mist or spitting blood or whatever spit gimmick you have. It's something that you can expect in like every Asuka match now because it's part of her character. It's part of the gimmick that she has. She has the gimmick mist. And as long as you implement that mist in a new and interesting way, nobody's going to complain. If you do it every single week where it's referee distraction, she spits in the face, she gets the win, or the person ducks and she spits in the referee's face and then cheating happens. Like, those are the two most normal fucking ways for it to go. That shit gets old.
Like 2001 Tajiri did when he had Tori Wilson. It was the same playbook.
Yeah, like sometimes they duck and he spits the mist on Tori's face. And then while he's being, oh no, I spit on your face, I'm sorry, he gets rolled up. Like, it's, that's the third most common variation. So like, there is not a lot of uniqueness you can bring to the wrestling world on a weekly basis, but like, we gotta try a little harder, man.
Hey, I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong because otherwise, I think wrestling would feel like a more legitimate type of sports entertainment because there'd be more people just winning or losing clean, and there'd be a hierarchy to follow and wins and loss records and power rankings and momentum.
Somebody should cheat to win once per show. Like, come on. Like, cheat.
Have a cheat card and.
Yeah, like multiple cheating per show is, I don't know, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm old fashioned in that sense, but like, you've got 3 hours of a TV show and you got referees working multiple matches and the same referee, this is really bad on AEW, the same referee will get distracted by the same cheat in the same show, like 90 minutes apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And then turn around and count a 3 fall. With, of course, just like they were born yesterday. Yeah. No, it's true. The wrestling tropes have proven themselves to be prevalent and repetitive and automatic. And you want to pray that maybe eventually, like I said, a little bit more legitimacy, have clean wins and losses. If guys are good in the ring or have good characters, there are creative ways to keep the heat or, keep the momentum going regardless. But yeah, it is a bummer that some of these tricks are just the same thing over and over again.
And that's been my problem with Bray the whole time is it seems like we're just spinning the same circles to get to the same places. You just replaced his actual Wyatt family with supernatural puppet characters, and now they're the Wyatt family. Then you just replace it with Alexa Bliss. Now she's the Wyatt family. I'm
almost surprised they haven't introduced puppet versions of Braun and Luke and Eric Rowan.
Well, I don't think you can now. It's,
Well, I mean,
it'd be too. Yeah. When I first saw the puppets, I thought that's what they were kind of supposed to be. But it's a little obvious that they're not representations of other people.
They're all representations of slabs of Bray's psyche, and that's, you know, Sister Abigail is obvious, and the Ramblin' Rabbit is basically the Eater of Worlds character, because he wears the Hawaiian shirt to kind of drive that home, and he just kind of, here we are saying metaphorical stuff without any actual structure and meaning, but I'm performing it well, so you're listening to me. And then
we got Husky Harris the pig.
Husky Harris is obviously the pig, but the fun one for me is Mercy the Buzzard, because Mercy is Waylon Mercy, who kind of was the inspiration of much of Bray Wyatt's characterizations. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard about the Waylon Mercy inspiration. That's the Hawaiian shirt inspiration stuff. And
the slightly psychotic but pleasant demeanor kind of, you know, persona. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think crazy characters in wrestling are just not good. I think crazy characters in wrestling, because it's an improvised medium, it's hard to do crazy improvised because it just seems random. And now that we're at a scripted place in pro wrestling, like we're at a more scripted place than we've ever been before, you need to make your psychotic ramblings have a trail to follow. They need to have a crumb that viewers can pick up on. You know, I was gonna make the analogy that, like, if you ever make a like mystery based video game, if nobody can solve any part of the mystery before the end of the game reveals it to you, it's a shitty mystery. If you can't solve the mystery, if there's no clues, like, you don't necessarily have to be able to solve it immediately, right? But if the clues don't lead you somewhere, if all this information is just to obfuscate the truth, is just to occupy your mind, if none of it's true, if none of it builds to anything, then it ends up being a waste of time for both the viewer and the creator. It ends up being a complete obfuscation of what the story was actually, and no one likes that. So I think with the scripted nature of it, you get away with so much less of the random psychotic ramblings that don't mean anything. And so far, I haven't seen like any of his psychotic ramblings mean anything.
Well, I wonder what kind of psychotic ramblings Undertaker whispered into Bray's ear after he Sister Abigail Knight, having had Knight get tossed to him by the Undertaker himself. I mean, Twitter went ablaze. I went ablaze. It was the passing of the torch moment personified to many. And, you know, I just want to cheer for Bray Wyatt. I want him to have a successful career. I want something to come out of this too. I want the breadcrumbs to lead us to the end of the mystery, or at least, you know, give us something concrete to understand what we're expecting at this point. Mm-hmm. So you have to pray we're going to get some significant forward momentum this Saturday, and they're going to stop, you know, ramping and ramping and ramping and ramping and ramping. Because eventually, you know, as some have I read, you know, suggest, it doesn't matter how how strong you are as a performer of the lyrics. We don't want to listen to the song anymore. And I'm getting to the point where, I'm with you. I want some structure to what's happening. I want to know what we're dealing with. I want some of these wispy, clouded ideas to just get a little bit more solid. So here's hoping they know we're in that boat, and here's hoping we get something really tangible on Saturday for Bray.
Yeah, not to harp too much longer on the Bray Wyatt LA Knight segment, but I'm really sad that they did it the way they did it with the American Badass character, because it all seems so out of left field. None of it really seemed to match up well. It all seemed really fucking random. It seemed really fucking random that Undertaker interrupted LA Knight. It seemed really fucking random that, you know, they got into the tiff that they did. LA Knight was literally about to walk away and then just didn't. Like, then he whispers in his ear. So again, we get nothing. We have no information. We have the world's smallest breadcrumb, and none of it seems to really make sense when you could have an easy slam dunk. I know they couldn't afford him. They could not afford it, and I don't think he would want to travel to do this kind of a shit. But maybe he could do like taped stuff from home. But if you had The Undertaker in his full-on like Ministry of Darkness, hooded figure, higher power style shtick, and he was
Yeah.
working with Bray Wyatt. He was like, there's so many stories you could write where, Undertaker is just essentially helping him harness some dark power, helping funnel it, helping guide it, helping mentor it, helping him control the Fiend. Maybe it could be a good guy thing. Maybe it could be like he's helping him, put the Fiend into a vessel similar to the urn. Oh my God, this is so easy to write. I can't believe I'm doing it for free. Like,
I agree with you. I've thought about that too. It would be phenomenal if Mark Calloway could teach Bray Wyatt how to master his supernatural, personas. It would be genius. Even Mick Foley could do the same. And
he also held the urn at one point.
I mean, it is a little cyclical. We've talked about how nothing's original in wrestling already on this specific episode, but also it's been just kind of a theme. There's so many
begging for some kind of connection between the two, and they ham-fisted it in before Undertaker passes away to some fucking random.
There it is, right there. Like, we still ate it up, didn't we? It still possessed the first 30 minutes of our discussion. Twitter. We, as a group of, of various different types of fans for this extremely, not formulaic and cyclical, but certainly.
You can say Marks. You can say Marks on this podcast.
I'm a Mark. I'm a proud Mark. If I met Bray Wyatt in real life, I would probably be hesitant to even approach him because of the characters and the stories he's been a part of. Even though I know he'd probably love to hear how anybody is inspired or enamored by the storytelling he participates in. I just feel like we might be getting too far off topic, but I did want to say, to kind of drive it all home, like, I would love if they could just pay Undertaker for 3 months of his time to come in and give that foundational managerial opportunity to Bray to tell the story you're discussing. It would be good. It would supplant Bloodline as the big story in WWE, and we'd all want to know how that's going for them.
Like he wouldn't even have to be there at the matches. He literally would not have to be even in the same room with Bray Wyatt. They could actually just do him and Bray Wyatt on a fucking Skype call, on a fucking Zoom meeting while discussing their dark dealings, and people would pop for this shit,
And quite honestly, man, I keep thinking in the back of my brain, what if Uncle Howdy, in his weird, undead cowboy look, is supposed to be kind of a strange reimagining of the Undertaker's aura. So
the original Taker had some real cowboy vibes.
I'm telling you, it may not be coincidence. There's the handlebar mustache. There's the dead looking eyes. There's the long hair. There's the cowboy look, the trench coat. Like, it's all there in a way with this Uncle Howdy guy. And for all we know, maybe Undertaker's appearance could have tied that together a little bit. Again, it's just too much strange, ambiguous, unformed content, and it needs to have some structure come Saturday. My prayer is that we get some, and at least some sort of understanding of what we're dealing with here with this Bray approach, really.
And to tie it all in, this is a perfect example of the most interesting thing to come out of pro wrestling had nothing to do with the Royal Rumble. It makes me wonder if these two characters, if these two wrestlers are even going to be in the Royal Rumble. Like, God forbid Bray Wyatt loses the Pitch Black match or the whatever it's called. Sure. And then he's like not even in the Rumble. Whoever loses that match, I would have to assume is not in the Royal Rumble. And nothing I watched this entire week mentioned the Royal Rumble. Nothing I've watched for like the last 3 episodes of WWE programming has even casually brought up the Royal Rumble. Like,
I got one. Am I allowed to? Or do you want to ramble on how you haven't seen references to the Rumble?
Definitely don't talk about the Royal Rumble on the Royal Rumble episode.
Well, I feel like the only segment that's really emphasizing the Rumble itself is anytime we check in with how Cody Rhodes is doing. You know, he had a vignette this past week about rebuilding his body and being ready specifically for the Rumble. So you want to talk about the character that most of us have had circled for months, even dating back to when he returned. The Rumble is his time. Cody Rhodes is going to win the Rumble to pave the way to winning the WWE Universal Championship and, you know, fulfill the prophecy that the Rhodes legacy would live on with the WWE title at last. That's the most focused character on the Rumble, and that's either, you know, a great way to drive home that that's what's truly going to happen, as many predict. Cody Rhodes walking out of the winner this Saturday. But for me, I'm more along the lines mainly because I have a different winner I want, right? No offense to Cody Rhodes. I just, you know, even after the amazing match of the year with a torn pec he went through with Seth, which Seth helped him so much. And God, what a great show of teamwork wrestling on that one. And bless Cody for putting himself through a torn pec match in Hell in a Cell. I am sorry, but the stories have moved on beyond him for me personally. Like, I don't want to see him be the one to win. I'd rather see him get real close and then get screwed out of it and have his day in the sun another day. But I'll just come right out and say it. I've made it clear pretty much, I think, for the last 3 weeks who I want to see win the men's Rumble, and it's not Cody Rhodes. But that's the one guy who's focused on the thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, they have two ways that they go about it, and it can be pretty obvious because we just had like the Edge return, right? We had like the Edge came back to wrestling, and then a year later, he's like, I gotta really prove myself, gotta show that grit, and like called his shot to win the Rumble. John Cena called his shot the year that he won the Rumble in 2013, I want to say. And it's normal, right? Like, it's normalized when guys are doing promos, like, I'm going to win the Rumble, of course, but, like, they usually don't layer it on too heavy with, like, the top guys. But so I think that the focus on Cody Rhodes would cheapen it a bit, because if you're going to do, like, I'm returning and going to win the Royal Rumble, you'd probably want it to be a surprise return, like a Big E coming back from injury, which would make people lose their fucking minds.
I think Big E is coming back this Saturday, actually, guys. I really do. I got this weird feeling in my bones that it may be a quick appearance, but I think he's going to make it back, and that's exciting.
Yeah, like John Cena came back and returned at number 30 or something at the New York Rumble, and it was like this huge deal, and people lost their minds. And so the first thing I thought of when they spoiled the Cody Rhodes return was, wow, they're probably not going to have him win it. He's still like in the top 3, top 4 picks, though, because there's still only so many guys you could actually expect to win.
Yeah, I have him in my number 2 pick. Like, it's a good storyline. It makes sense. You kind of root for Cody to have that, even though, if I'm being perfectly frank with you guys, like Cody Rhodes, who returned and the way he's been carrying himself, like he feels so entitled to me in a way. There's something distinctly unlikable about what I hear him saying outside of, I have Rhodes in my blood, and I like a dig it. I love the Rhodes family, but I don't like the way he's being presented. Like, he just rubs me the wrong way. Like he's really just being a kind of a cocky, patronizing heel, and yet people love him because that's the baby face. And so that's, again, like, I know it's my personal opinion creeping in here, but yes, he's my number 2 to win, because it's what many have been writing for 3/4 of a year. I just don't particularly care for it. So I think you're right. I do understand where you're coming from. I do kind of think that by showing us that he was on his way back and it was confirmed that we should have him on our minds, they are getting ready to do something else. And the potential for that something else there's a lot of different directions to go with it. We'll be breaking down who might win here in a little bit, I'm sure, but it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion as much as it seemed to be about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, the timeline I see for Cody Rhodes is he wins the big one, SummerSlam heel. That's kind of the time frame I have for Cody. Because he's just got like that personal chip on his shoulder to win the WWE title. It's a personal legacy issue for him. It's so clearly like the only real goal for him for coming back to WWE. And we saw him become like a natural heel. We saw people just kind of start booing him, even though he was supposed to be a good guy in AEW, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that issue, you have with him is just him. Like that just seems to be part of it. Like when he was a face, like when he went to the indies, you don't really get to be face or heel because you're doing like spot shows. You're doing like one-off shows where it's just everyone cheering for everybody and everyone's just doing all their best stuff all the time. So that stuff didn't really matter, and everyone was behind him because they were happy for him. They were happy that WWE guy broke away. He was one of the first guys to choose to leave and just work a fuckload of indie dates. He was one of the first guys to really command that price because I think Kurt was kind of like on his way out. He wasn't in his prime when Kurt Angle was doing it, and it was really just based off of like the failings of TNA that allowed Kurt to do that kind of stuff. But Cody had just decided, he like made up his mind to leave WWE, so everyone was happy for him with that stuff. He went out and did like a bunch of great wrestling matches. But now he's back in an environment where he's got to be telling like a long-term story for anyone to really care. And we just haven't had that. We haven't had and we haven't had that for most wrestlers. Again, pretty much the only really good long-term storytelling we've had is the Bloodline.
At least in the last couple of years, you're absolutely right.
We had some pretty good stuff with Dolph Ziggler. He had a pretty good slow burn of just being a figure, not really like its own storyline.
I mean, I'll need you to elaborate. I don't remember poor Dolph doing a whole lot in the last
year that he had the Money in the Bank
years.
And waited to cash in until after WrestleMania.
Okay. Well,
he was an important figure. He stayed relevant. And he should have won that Royal Rumble, actually. The idea of the guy who wins the Royal Rumble having Money in the Bank is so good, actually.
Ooh, having a double tap opportunity, right, to win the championship. That'd be kind of fun. You're right.
Like you get the guaranteed spot at Mania, but if you lose, while the guy is celebrating, you can cash in and hit him from behind. Like, you could cash in before the WrestleMania. Now all of a sudden we don't have a Royal Rumble guy and we have to come up with a number one contender, shit like that.
Oh, and then they win the King of the Ring tournament too at the same time. And they have all these different paths.
Fan. That's really it. I'll mark out for Dolph, I guess. But that was like a singular moment we were just really anticipating, and they cashed in really well on, and the crowd loved it. It wasn't
not
really
to mention we
story.
Hated Alberto Del Rio.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
So Cody could very well have been supplanted as the favorite to win it. I could totally see the Bloodline having a really strong Rumble storyline wise, and they just gain up and the numbers game takes them out. And, we have a different path to that fight for Cody. And I wouldn't hate it because I want to see a different story play out right now. No doubt about it. But there's a couple compelling ones that could be on the horizon, depending on how they spin it. And, we always have more faith in WWE's creativity than it turns out we should, huh?
You might. I certainly don't. I don't
yeah, you're pretty
in it ever.
No, you're pretty
disenfranchised. Universally known as a hater. So.
What number does Cody Rhodes come out this weekend?
Number 1.
Really?
If they're smart, man, people like So number one spot, number one and number two, we talked about this a little bit before, right? There's a couple things that are really important for these spots. And not only do they have to be like good, in shape, technical, competent wrestlers who like can put on a mini match, but they're guys who get their full entrance.
Yeah.
They get the full pop, Having Ric Flair come out at number one and two still works, even when he was at his old age in the late 2000s, because he can still get all of his shit in and people will pop for the Flair flop and all the crap, So even though he's not doing the best, like one-on-one little mini wrestling match, you get his full entrance.
Yeah.
So letting Cody soak all that in and then letting Cody go from like number two to the final four. And, that could be a huge element of his story. And also, it protects him when he doesn't end up winning the Rumble.
I think that's a pretty stable bet. I love your suggestion of that. I think number two is more likely than one. And I think he gets a big moment. I think number one could be Sami Zayn.
For similar reasons, right? Soak in the crowd.
I mean, or somebody else who's got a real shot to win it. I could think of a couple more guys on my list who I've, put together of most likely winners. I mean, can you imagine if number one and two were The Rock and Cody?
Ew.
For all, I'm
the
legitimately
Rock is not gonna work a fucking full Rumble match.
You're totally likely right. I mean, he's gonna be 26 if he even shows up, and there's zero reason for us to legitimately think he's putting his time into wrestling right now outside of those seeds planted theoretically those several years ago when he raised Roman Reigns' arm after his own Royal Rumble win in 2015. But I think they just brought Rock in for that to try to, make the crowd happy about that victory for Roman, which nobody was.
Ahead of time, everyone was going to boo, and they thought The Rock would make them cheer, and then they still booed.
Exactly.
I was so proud of the universe with that one. I was so proud of the fans.
Absolutely. They're not going to, just swallow whatever the hell WWE wants when they want what they want that bad. And that was Daniel Bryan at the time, of course. But no need to go too far back in time. We've done that a lot. Focusing on this year's Rumble, I love your call that Cody could be number two. And I agree he'll have that fire entrance because he deserves to. Any run down the aisle would be underwhelming after what they've built this up to be. So that's pretty cool. It's just, I wonder who's going to stand across from him when the bell rings. There's so many different ways this could be a really good Rumble, and they really need one because last year both the 22 Rumbles sucked.
Yeah, the last good one was the one where Lesnar came in at number one, and then it sucked as soon as he got eliminated.
That's your opinion. Please see our previous episode for more on one of my favorite Rumbles in the last several years. So,
well, I think I bring it up because I think another good pick for number one, number two is McIntyre. I think he comes out with the sword. He does his little put the sword in the stone gimmick. People really seem to like that, and he's a guy who people like. Another thing that makes a good like number one or number two pick is always people who are high up on the list that we think could win the Rumble. And this could be a McIntyre year. It'd be really soon, but typically if you're going to win two Rumbles, it's been back to back in the past.
Ooh, interesting. True. Yeah. Shawn and Austin and Hogan. They won two. I mean, Randy and Edge are two examples of multi-time winners who had
were a decade apart.
Pretty much, yeah. 11 years for Edge, 8 years for Orton, but who's counting, right? It's not like I know this off the top of my head. But yeah, McIntyre could be a strong choice to come in early, but the thing is he's probably not on most people's bubble to win the thing at all. And it's weird because, part of the bummer about the 2022 Royal Rumble is that it did end with Brock versus McIntyre. and Brock got the come up, right? He got the revenge from McIntyre's elimination of him in 2020 that you were just referencing and hating on.
Mm-hmm.
Brock got his win, and I was totally unenthused, and you weren't any more enthused. Thank you very much. Just because it had come down to those two to begin with, and we really didn't need Brock in that position. But that's all to just kind of ramp up to the point that, hey, Brock is back too. He shows up on Raw at the end of the show to be a thorn in Bobby Lashley's side, which is interesting for me because Bobby Lashley was actually on my list of potential winners this year, simply to build to a potential Bloodline versus Hurt Business clash, which, is being slowly teased a little bit with different things happening on Raw with MVP. And I think it would be really cool to have Lashley have that reminder of how legitimate an athlete and wrestler he has been. He's an extremely strong candidate to bust through certain ceilings and be at the top of the card. And I thought Bloodline versus Hurt Business could be that path. But if Brock has his sights set on him and Brock is number one and Cody's number two, the plot just continues to thicken. Brock, of course, I was surprised to see him. Honestly, I really was. How about you? What do you think? Where does Brock fit in this year's Rumble for you?
I think he's like the last 7. I think like the way I would implement Brock is not how WWE would, because I would implement Brock probably always at like the 12 to 13 spot, because that's where they typically put guys like Kane. That's where they've put Braun Strowman a lot of times to like start to clear up the ring. They start to get the guys who get like the most eliminations every year usually come in right around like the number 10 spot, somewhere in that area, because it energizes the Rumble. It brings a new intensity to it. It sucks because
business is picking up.
Yeah, it sucks because a lot of people are not like the biggest Brock Lesnar fans, and I've been included in that a lot myself. But when it comes to the Royal Rumble, there's just some entrants that are a big deal. You just know that they have the capacity to change it more than others, It just, no matter how big of a star they are, an average sized guy coming to the Rumble, he's just going to enter the Rumble. Daniel Bryan. When he enters the Rumble, he's just going to be another guy in the Rumble and do some cool shit, maybe. When Lesnar or Kane or Braun Strowman or even a Bobby Lashley or even a Drew McIntyre, if those guys enter the Rumble, I expect something about the landscape of the Rumble to change quickly.
Sure. You're right. They're people movers. They absolutely can clear house if they are booked to be that way. So Rumble or Brock being a late entrant can make plenty of sense here. Absolutely. McIntyre being a workhorse, somebody who is legitimately, in my opinion, underrated from where he is on the card right now. He could be definitely a strong candidate to be that number one spot. Here's somebody who is also on my dark horse list of potential winners because of the way they've been booked recently, but absolutely, in my humble opinion, would deserve it because long career, great matches recently, not necessarily a ton of gas left in the tank, but can you guess where I'm going?
No clue.
Sheamus.
Oh, okay.
Sheamus has been booked ever since Triple H took over. Sheamus has been quietly treated as one of the top guys on the card. He's been in legitimately incredible matches. Sorry, buddy, go ahead.
Guess who he works out with?
Drew McIntyre.
Well, he used to work out with Triple H.
Triple H too. Well, yeah. I mean, Sheamus was a Triple H guy.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why it's pretty okay in my mind and understandable that he's getting closer and closer to the top of the card recently. And the Brawling Brutes have been made better with Sheamus at the helm. I think that Ridge Holland and Butch have done their part to add legitimacy to the faction themselves. It's not like they've been sleeping. But Sheamus has been getting better and better and being put on better and better matches. And you know,
I need to see evidence because I don't believe in the banger after banger narrative.
I mean, and that's you.
I am a banger denier.
We already admitted you don't get to watch said bangers, right? I mean, I went back and watched the McIntyre Sheamus tag team match with the Viking Raiders this past week, and it was excellent. It was excellent. Why, as somebody who hasn't watched it, why would you be so?
I turned it off. I turned it off halfway through. I was tired of it. I didn't finish it.
I'm impressed, I guess. I'm not sure how to say that. I mean, that's a pretty damn good tag team match. What's not to like?
I don't know. Maybe I could try to give it another shot, but like when I go into a match and I'm like, my time is valuable, some things get skipped pretty quick. What can I say?
Well, we're busy dudes, and I get it. Hey, again, folks, we should set up a Patreon. If they want to help us watch more wrestling, we could definitely use some love in the Patreon.
We're at least 1,000 subscribers away from a Patreon.
That's not too bad. That's only 4 figures. I feel like we could do that. Anyway, going back to our charming conversation about hating on all of these ideas, Sheamus, I think, could have one more great run at the top of the card if they wanted to book him that way. And his wrestling,
McIntyre's right there. Why would you bother with Sheamus?
Well, and you're not wrong. Drew McIntyre
they have the same moveset.
Also false. But Drew's got the look.
The Bro Kick is cooler than the Claymore. Like, come on. I just don't get it.
A million %. You're totally right. Claymore is above anything Sheamus is doing. And Drew looks like an unbelievable specimen of humanity. Like, it's crazy what his body proportions are. He's a mountain. And like, even he reads bigger to me than even Braun Strowman, even though I think Braun's legitimately taller. I'd have to look that up. But Drew is just a mammoth of a dude. And I'd love to see Drew get more time leading the company. But I mean, we've seen Brock's, beat him clean and take back his win, and we've seen Roman beat him and kind of deflate any sort of reason for him to be that guy. So I feel like he's not going to be a top title contender until somebody takes the title off Roman somehow, some way, maybe even from within.
So are we talking winners now, or are we still talking like people to start the Rumble?
I love the idea of people to start the Rumble. I would be shocked if you're actually ending up being incorrect about Cody being one of them. But, I had suggested Sheamus as my last idea. You had suggested McIntyre. You got another one up your sleeve?
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more Cody does seem like it could be a number 3 or something. So he doesn't get the full entrance, but he gets the pop and hits the ring hot. But I'm thinking that to start things off, we might see a less exciting figure, but still somebody who could take this opportunity to show off their technical wrestling skills. And it's the spiritual successor to Charlie Haas, Mr. Shoosh himself. I think he could make it into the Rumble in the first or second spot. They've been utilizing his character work a lot.
Let me tell you something about Chad Gable, the former Shorty G. He's excellent. He's so excellent. We've all known he's so excellent to the point where people online on Twitter are rolling their eyes at how good he is, despite where he is on the card.
Despite his awful gimmick.
Well, to be candid with you, it's way light years ahead of Shorty G. His work. Him and Otis are doing perfectly fine as I would say the perennial gatekeepers, right? For the tag division. They lose to everybody, but they don't have a bad match with anyone. And the crowd is appreciating Gable's technical prowess and his goofy, character work, his ability to laugh at himself. And Otis, of course, is starting to bring back some of the lovable and highly entertaining traits he had at the tail end of the Heavy Machinery run, where he won Money in the Bank and lost all the momentum because we lost crowds from the pandemic. Like, those are two legitimately pound for pound phenomenal wrestlers who are criminally underrated. And I love that you call out a Chad Gable to get an early look in this Rumble. I'd love for him to be the Iron Man of the match because the guy deserves to be treated like a Kurt Angle. He's that good, and there's no reason why he can't find his way up the card at this point. Except, especially Triple H at the helm, he understands the value of undersized wrestlers. He was the reason why there was a cruiserweight division at all in the first place, that they had their own show, that they had their tournaments, that guys like Drew Gulak and Akira Tozawa, the Brian Kendrick, these guys had jobs off and on, or still have jobs, thank goodness. Mm-hmm. He would get it. Like Chad deserves some point where he gets to take a step up and stay up on lower mid-carders.
He's been paying his dues. He's been taking what they give him, and he's been doing it well. And, I don't think it's quite knocked it out of the park, but I think it's time to spotlight him a little bit. I think it's time to give him I expect him to do something this Rumble. I expect him to have one of the more memorable spots in the Rumble, but it could become something not being one or two and getting to show off how good of a wrestler he is. It could be like a surprise entrant comes to the ring and tries to do their gimmick and get shooshed,
Oh, sure.
I could see The Godfather making a surprise return because he is a very popular surprise return. The Undertaker being at TV, very like the show before the Rumble makes me think that The Godfather showing up could be a big deal. So if The Godfather showed up and tried to do his whole roll of fatty for this Pimp Daddy, although I don't know if he could get away with that anymore, but he starts to do some kind of a bit, or anybody, if the Honky Tonk Man comes back and tries to sing and Elias has already been eliminated,
right?
Then maybe
I was thinking
Chad
of Elias
Gable that shooshes him.
Shoosh, sure.
Who else would talk during the Rumble? Who else would bring a microphone to the ring during the Rumble?
Ooh, excellent question. I mean,
CM Punk did it really well, but he got one handed to him after he was in the Rumble. Who would come down the ramp in the middle of a Rumble, like a spot 8, 9, or 10, with a microphone in their hand?
Miz would. Yeah. Logan Paul is on my bubble to make a return. His leg injury was a 6-week one, and he has no problems with the microphone in his hand.
Interesting. I mean, these are guys that I wouldn't think live and die by having a microphone,
I got one more though, and it's another one I'll slide into our contenders for the first two of the match. Because Cody, I'm pretty sure is locking into one, but the other one is Big E. I said it already that I think he's going to be in the Rumble. I think it'd be really special and beautiful even if it's for 2 minutes he gets in there. And
if he's not number 30, they're fucking stupid.
Well, see,
I'm sorry. If he's not in the last 3, they're fucking stupid.
It's true. It's a huge opportunity to make a pop of the night, but that's why I would either do it at the last 3 or, like I said, one of the first 2.
Yeah, because they treated him so bad as champ, man. They booked him so weak. I don't get it.
It's strange. Despite, I think it would be wonderful to see a documentary someday about the New Day and how, if I recall correctly, if I followed all the backstage news enough, for those of you who don't know, these guys were all floundering in the mid card, and it was Xavier Woods, the PhD psychology student, right, who literally bet his career to Vince McMahon's face. The 3 of us can make this group work. Let us do it our way. I'll bet my career on it. He put his non-kayfabe job on the line.
Well, I mean, when your career is, NXT curtain jerker, I mean, there's not much to bet.
See, at that point, I knew Xavier Woods more as Apollo. I think it was Apollo Creed. No, that's a Rocky character. It was the guy now I can't remember his name from Impact, so I'm killing my own idea. But
you don't remember Truth and Consequences?
That's it. Consequences Creed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was crushing it in Impact, and
or
then
Lethal Consequences. You remember he was with Jay Lethal,
right? Yes, and Lethal was still doing his Macho Man shtick, right?
Yeah.
Xavier Woods is the hero that made the New Day, that allowed the New Day, I should say, to get as much freedom as they did. And then his two buddies each get WWE championship runs. And absolutely, my friend, they were both booked terribly and just totally disrespected. And I would hope Triple H would want to make good on that eventually. I'd love for even Kofi Kingston to have a great showing in the Rumble this year and remind us why he was a main eventer and then not look back. But Big E having a moment to return, could have a microphone in his hand, could get shooshed. And then I'm telling you, Big E would eliminate the piss out of Chad Gable, because, I mean, what an honor it would be to be eliminated by Big E on his return night after what he went through, right?
And you talk about Big E and the New Day. Do we even know if the New Day is going to be in the Rumble? They've been tag team champs down on NXT doing some pretty entertaining stuff, making fun of the new version of the Fashion Police, basically. But
oh yeah, good point. You have a good point. We don't
are they even going to be involved? Because they're often some of the best parts of the Rumble.
Oh, 100%.
Like everyone focuses on the Kofi spot, but the Kofi spot came to involve them, multiple times. Like, do you remember when he stepped on the pancakes?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, you remember he had like one foot down and he had another foot like on another wrestler. And when he got up, Big E threw the pancakes down under him so he could put his foot down.
Oh,
that shit's hilarious.
Genius stuff.
Which, by the way, I'm just going to point out is super unfair to Sabu, because Sabu got chokeslammed through a table and his feet were touching the table, not the floor, but they considered him eliminated. That's bullshit.
Oh, well, I mean, Sabu was never going to win a Royal Rumble. You know what it means to be a star created in an outside company.
Right.
You're about to get buried.
He was literally there just to go through the table that he set up. So,
There's no burial better. Excuse me. Oh, man, it's getting late to the point where I am having a hard time saying even simple phrases. So I suppose if you're down, we can really kind of start zeroing in on whichever you might prefer, man. Who's going to win the thing? I think what might be more fun is talking about the surprise entrance in either the women's or men's Rumble, because if it's one thing I should notice about our podcasting so far, we're struggling to focus on the women's Rumble too, which deserves its own attention, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that before we got onto the Chad Gable tangent. Actually, I was hoping to transfer over, because if we're talking about like who's going to start off a Royal Rumble, and we're looking at the women's Royal Rumble, there's not a ton of candidates I can think of. There's not a lot of.
Naomi returns.
Nothing that comes to mind is obviously as stuff like a Cody Rhodes. Like, are there any women looking to make a big return?
Yeah, Naomi. Naomi is the one. Naomi's been buzzed about to come back and do a couple things. Number one, pick up, her own career after we haven't seen her since she and Sasha Banks left together as women's tag team champions, dumping the titles, feeling disrespected. Naomi has taken an extended break, and if she comes back, a lot of folks, somebody on Twitter was kind of inspiring me by pointing out that she'd be a great female to join the bloodline, not only for being married to Jey Uso, but also because she deserves to be treated as a higher element to the female card than she has been almost ever. I mean, she had a very
quick. Would she be an honorary Uso because she's married in, or would she be like full bloodline?
I think there's an interesting storyline wrinkle that can come up, or it could be a joke, like you just chuckled at. It could go either way. You could see Sami Zayn going, "Oh, so I'm another honorary Uce. This is great. I'm not the only one. I don't feel so bad." Or I could see them being like Jay having a chip on his shoulder to Roman and being like, "You're gonna call my wife honorary?"
Yeah.
And being the beginning of that dissension, right? So you can really go either way with that and have it be a quality decision, honestly.
Yeah, I really like the addition of her to the Bloodline, because I do think the Bloodline needs a female representative now that they have run into Judgment Day. This idea that every stable, every team, which I'm glad to see more stables cropping up, right? Like more teams cropping up. It's something we've harped on for years at times, and we're finally starting to see some popular ones get solidified. Although I guess that whole OG club thing didn't really end up going anywhere. I don't know. I'm just glad that they're not fighting Judgment Day. But if Naomi came out as a way to check Rhea Ripley, that makes perfect sense. That's a good organic storytelling, that's better than Mia Yim teaming up with OG Club, I guess.
Yeah, something about Mia Yim in that group has been a bit forced. I feel like the main roster fan base doesn't know who Mia Yim is.
It doesn't help that Carl Anderson always talks about his hot Asian wife, and now they have like a random semi-Asian girl in their group, so.
Well, yeah, though Mia Yim is the hot Asian wife to Keith Lee, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's not even with the company.
Right. Which is a big mistake from AEW from WWE deciding to let go of Keith Lee. I would love for Keith Lee to be a surprise entrant in this Saturday's Rumble, because I can't think of too much he's up to over in AEW, and he is infinitely better suited to be in WWE spotlights. Like, they're just stupid for thinking anything less than main event star with Keith Lee. They're stupid.
Yeah. When it comes to the women's Rumble, it's a lot easier to find surprise entrants in the form of like former wrestlers, right? There's always there's almost like a third of it. It feels like there's like 10 women, because when they had the first one ever, all the women who never got an opportunity, Lita, Trish, I think Beth Phoenix was like retired by then, right? Candice Michelle, Kelly, like all those women finally got like an opportunity to be in the first one ever, and that's really cool. But are we going to see them kind of dig into the NXT roster even more than they have? Because filling the 30 spots for the women's Rumble does seem just a little harder than the men's roster.
I could see a couple of ladies from NXT's women's roster making it in, whether it be the Toxic Attraction girls, right?
Ooh, they're gonna be busy, aren't they?
I mean, you'd think so. You'd think they'd be busy. Or maybe the NXT women's NXT women's tag team champions would be Casey Carter and whatever Casey Canizaro's fake name is now.
Well, there's no chance we get Kairi Sane back for the Rumble, do we?
As much fun as that would be, there's no reason for her to. She doesn't want to be in America, and maybe she does a cameo if we're having a good time, but it would probably only be to set up another potential returnee, and a great candidate for the first two spots in the Rumble would be whatever Asuka wants to be on her way back, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Asuka. She should win every Royal Rumble, so.
She's been away for several months, as she's been subtly hinting at getting away from all of the silly aspects of her character, and maybe even focusing down into a more brutal character reminiscent of what she would portray in Japan. And who wouldn't be all for that? Maybe she's tired of nobody being ready for Asuka and wanting to change up the production a little bit, because that character maybe has run its course in the main roster, despite how amazing she is in the ring. She's not quite ever been able to beat the American girls, has she?
She always runs into one of the big three, right? It's always
Right.
Charlotte, Becky, or
Sasha at the time, you'd say.
At the time, it was Sasha or Bailey. Yeah, they're kind of interchangeable. They're the ones who they're the transitional title holders. Like, they'll win it from girls like Asuka and Naomi just to give it to Charlotte and Becky. So, or I guess now maybe Bianca. Bianca might be considered strong enough booked to be in that picture, but then again, they also had Becky debut and drop her in 3 seconds flat. I didn't hate that decision, but it certainly wasn't as satisfying as that match could have been.
Oh, no. I mean, is it ever really quite as satisfying as it could be? Probably not.
I feel like Becky's the right one to do it with. It just shouldn't have been Bianca who took the pin, right? Like, when they did it between Daniel Bryan and Sheamus, it was just stupid top to bottom. There's like nobody you could put in that position where it would fucking make sense. Like, there's just, I don't know. That was a really asinine thing to do, but I liked the idea with the Becky one. It just seemed like Bianca Belair was not the right target.
You know, big, powerful, emphatic returns are one of my favorite things. But yeah, I was there at that SummerSlam in the room. And the notion of them having a good contested battle as Becky comes back and challenges Bianca to a Raw women's title match, like, I was like all for it. But Raw or women or SmackDown, like, it could have been either. I can't remember. So fact check me if you absolutely must. But it wasn't. It was just a shitty, sad, like, why would we do that to Bianca? She had just had the first women's main event, the first one-on-one women's main event in WrestleMania history. And with two women of color, which is just phenomenal and applaudable.
That was a banger of a match. That's a real banger. You want to talk about banger after banger after banger? Bianca Belair was putting on fucking quality stuff no matter who she was wrestling.
And still is. And she's getting better.
She was elevating everyone around her constantly. And then when she had to fight back from under to get the title back, it felt like there was a noticeable dip in the quality of her matches.
Well, she got some wind let out of her personal sales, no doubt. She got a little, disappointed and disenfranchised, as I'm sure any champion who thinks their push was well executed from both their standpoint and the creative, and then finding it deflated with something like a Becky Lynch shit the brick, Beck Plex 3 count in 6 seconds loss at SummerSlam, like that would derail a lot of folks' ability to believe that they are even worthy of putting on the quality that they're trying to put out. Hard stuff, but Bianca's gained a lot of that fire back. Obviously, this run with the championship on Raw has been long and has been fun, and she keeps getting better. So I think she's going to put on a great match this weekend against the chick she's facing. Sorry, that just shows that Bianca's going to win.
Oh my god!
And I just feel like Becky has a great shot to win the Rumble, theoretically, to be the first ever 2-time women's champion or women's Royal Rumble winner. Who do you think would be more likely to do that, Becky or Asuka?
Oh, Becky's more likely. For sure. I wouldn't be surprised if either one did it, but I think Becky is by far more likely.
She's just a huge star right now, and has been for several years, and should be for several more. I think the women's Royal Rumble match comes down to a few notable names, but there are some dark horses. Who knows, man? This new Asuka character could add extra, power. I mean, Triple H has always been a fan. He respected the hell out of her in NXT. So I'm sure he would push her if he was given the right opportunity. Chelsea Green is supposed to be returning. Everybody's buzzing about that a little bit as far as the pundits are concerned. She had a very short-lived experience in WWE before, but there's a lot of potential in the eyes of many educated wrestling, minds. And she could be the returnee who has a great match. Fun dark horse would be Io Sky, who deserves to be near the top of the women's division too.
I was going to put her as a great number 1 or number 2 participant.
You would?
I would. I don't think she would have I don't think she'd necessarily have the big pop of an entrance. However, if you told me her entrance was Damage Control coming to the ring and Bayley cutting a short promo on why Io Sky is going to go number 1 to number 30 and win the whole thing, I could see it.
I think it could be really fun to see Io Sky when she's got the investment behind her, because she's amazingly athletic. She's extremely smooth.
Bro, she's hardcore as fucking NXT.
Oh yeah.
She did so many hard. Every time I saw her in a match, she was smacking a bitch with a chair or putting a trash can over her head and jumping off a cage or some shit.
Exactly, right. I was just about to mention that spot. The moonsaults off the cages were especially memorable. Io Sky's a badass, man, and she's bigger than Bayley. Not to say Bayley isn't another person I think could truly win this Rumble, because she deserves, again, to also have another feather in her cap for all that she's done in this era of women's wrestling. But all those aren't even my favorites. There's even Alexa Bliss in the back of my mind in case she takes another step forward with whatever the hell she's doing with Wyatt. And there's a couple young ones, who are coming up who can get some love, whether it's Shotzi Blackheart, who had a decent 2022.
I would not be surprised if she's number 1.
She could be a lot of fun with the Tank too. Yeah. China walked out with the fucking bazooka. So the Tank is definitely the spiritual successor, and Shotzi's cool, man, and she's a better wrestler than many people who are going to be in that match. So she could have a good match. I've always been a fan of Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross is on my list of those who could have a good Rumble showing, and could be fun to have her big entrance, with the pseudo sanity type entrance theme that she's picked up since going back to her insane character, which is so appropriate. So much can be done. But we are getting almost to 2 hours. So it might be time to truly talk about who's going to win it. And I'm going to go first. I just want to, with the women's match, I think the winner is going to be Rhea Ripley.
The time seems right, doesn't it?
I think I think the time is now or never, because she's been circling the top of the Royal Rumble standings, coming in runners up several times. I think certainly in the Bianca Belair year that launched Bianca. So
where is Charlotte Flair at? Right, where is Charlotte right now?
Charlotte is sitting pretty at the top of the SmackDown women's division.
Right. So, if we can get Charlotte out of the way for one Royal Rumble, I think Rhea Ripley can definitely win it.
There's no reason for Charlotte to participate this Saturday on paper right now. Right. And I think Rhea Ripley has earned the opportunity to run with that trust, because she's done a lot for Judgment Day. I think we both know that. We both get it. She's maybe the most unique aspect of the faction.
She's the most charismatic member.
Pragmatic, define it for me, because my 2/3 or my charismatic. Thank you. No, I mean, it's weird because you'd think a Finn Balor would be plenty charismatic, and Damian Priest has fantastic presence, but no, I agree with you. Rhea Ripley's she's an extremely unique individual. She's an extremely unique talent. She's a fantastic performer. Facial expressions, body language, the shape of the body itself, very unique. The style she wrestles with, the style she carries herself with, and the snide, badass attitude. There's no one like Rhea Ripley. And there hasn't been since she got here to the main roster. She's been somebody to watch the whole time. So I think it's shit or get off the pot for Rhea Ripley right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's been all this buzz about her forever. She's been super popular forever. And now to be that guy, a lot of it is about her look, right? A lot of it is about, like, but that's stuff WWE cares about. You know, WWE cares that you look at somebody and are immediately interested just based on, you know, preconceived notions about them. And putting her with Judgment Day has allowed her to cultivate, like, the perfect look. You know, they haven't tried to make her grow her hair out and look like a Charlotte Flair style. So, you know, that stuff has worked out really well. But if she doesn't do something other than be Dominic Mysterio's mommy, like, all of that's going to be flushed down the toilet by the time WrestleMania even happens.
What an interesting thing to even play up the notion of an on-screen, like, romance there or duo. Like, there's lots of them rubbing off on each other, but especially Rhea Ripley rubbing off on Dom there, which is such an interesting relationship dynamic duo to develop, don't you think? Like, of all the people to be drawn to Rhea Ripley and have some of her characteristics change them, Dominic Mysterio being that person is so interesting. And they're the heart of what makes Judgment Day watchable for me. Not that I don't like Finn Balor or Damian Priest. They're both excellent in-ring workers, if I'm being honest, with their own unique and individual, you know, aspects to respect. But it's all about Rhea and Dom, and it really shouldn't be. It's a testament to what Rhea can do. And I know I've been yammering. Go ahead.
Well, it's a testament to what people find interesting. They don't care about the wrestling part. That's the only part the other guys are doing. They care about the character work, which is what Dom and Rhea Ripley are doing. Rhea's doing the character work every fucking match. But she's not wrestling, so she has to do something to stand out. And so every time she gets in the ring and she gets in somebody's face, it's facial expressions, it's go on and hit me, it's the smarminess, like it's the cocky attitude, you know? And everyone else is just doing the wrestling parts.
Not to mention the wrestling guys part.
You know, like, yeah, like when Dominic's in a fucking submission hold, he's the only one who interacts with Rhea Ripley. You know? So, like, that kind of stuff is just what people get drawn to. Wrestling is a million tiny little details. Everybody likes little details in wrestling. They like the way a guy does a certain move. They like the way a guy sells a certain move. They like the way a guy gets in the ring or climbs the turnbuckles or stomps his foot, like when he does a punch. Like, it's all tiny little things. So if you're the person doing the most little things, you will get that attention. And I'm with you. This is the time to cash in that attention. Rhea Ripley has everybody's attention. Do something with it. She's not a manager. She's a fucking wrestler.
And she's really, really, really ready for this. I think she's grown into herself as a performer and a personality, and her charisma's off the charts. She's still young enough that this is the right time to push her and make her a star for literally a decade to come. Like, let's get this moving. She's already given up some key losses to some key people and key opportunities over key years. You know, let's give her one and let's move her up this bitch. Let's strap that rocket and give her an opportunity to truly be the individual that most fans are beginning to recognize she is. So, what do you know? We get to agree on that one. That's kind of strange.
Well, yeah, I mean, you finally picked a good wrestler who has a good character. So.
Let's have a little bit of fun before we kiss the women's rumble off and return to the men's to see who we think might be the surprise entrance there, or the winner, of course. Well, I'm just curious. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's one thing I wish that the NXT Vengeance match was happening first. I wish that, obviously, this wasn't like their long-term plans for the NXT women's title, but I think a good direction to go with it is, so it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's, was it Gigi Dolan and I'm so
no.
terrible with names these days.
No, please. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I remember the Toxic Attraction girls, but you got one of them.
So up until like a couple weeks ago, they were just the two girls behind Mandy Perez, so that's fair.
Right.
But it's
Mandy Rose, Roxanne Perez.
Yeah, sorry, it was Mandy Rose and yeah. See, now I'm doing it because I'm trying so hard because I don't want to forget their names, but it starts with a J. But either way, that's the problem. Is like their names are so similar in my head, it's just getting mixed up. But the point is that whoever loses, whoever doesn't end up as the champion, because I believe Roxanne Perez is going to drop the belt to one of the Toxic Attraction members.
Yeah, and probably JC Jane for the record.
JC Jane, okay, that's the other one. It's Gigi Dolan and JC Jane. See, they're so similar in name. I wanted to say Gigi Jane at one point, I swear to God.
Right.
But so the point is that I think whoever ends up as not the women's champion from those two, I think should enter and have a good chance at winning the Rumble. I think if like Juicy, I think if one of them wins and the other wins the Women's Royal Rumble, it could be a huge storyline for women's wrestling.
Sure. I mean, it's fun because in my head, I thought, what if they did create a big star here this year, whether it be in the men's or the women's, and they just swerved us and grabbed a dark horse and put them into this situation to win it all. Toxic Attraction would be your choice, though?
Well, just because of like what they've been, just it's just about positioning on the card. JC Jane and Gigi Dolan are, you know, the runners up or like the co-winners of the Battle Royale. So they've already shown that they're really good at over-the-top battle royales. Lean into that. Use that for the storyline. They both, you know, I mean, they might need both of them there to do it, to pull it off, right? They might need to be working together. But like they both eliminate each other at the same time to make it a triple threat for this whole big thing. Like, you know, lean into the fact that they've already basically gone through a fucking Royal Rumble and come out to the point where it was just the two of them, and then they planned their fucking, you know, exits from the over the top battle royale to be number one contenders at the same time. Like they've shown in character that they are smart enough and competent enough to achieve this exact same goal. So why can't they do it again?
Well, it'd be fresh. That's why we don't like fresh, fun, clever ideas in wrestling, with all due respect. That's why even my ideas for who would be fresh and fun to win, like somebody truly plucked from super obscurity. How about NXT UK women's standout Jinny was somebody I enjoyed watching. She played the hyper skinny bad girl model looking character before Billie Kay made it funny and before Carmella, did it Jersey style, I'll say. Jinny was a really...
One time I saw her, I confused her for Tessa Blanchard.
Ooh, not bad. They have similar noses. No offense to either lady, but Jinny has a very mesmerizing presence, has a great manipulative heel character. And what if she got plucked out of obscurity and given a complete run to the top? Could have been fun. Another NXT UK standout that crossed my mind to get the same treatment that you're suggesting is Meiko Satomura, who got our eyes on her first at Mae Young Classic #2, where she was just by and large, obviously, just top tier. Holy shit, can Meiko Satomura wrestle and be awesome at it, and has gone on to have a great... Well, I can't say I actually have watched any of her NXT UK run, being completely honest with you, because there's just too much content to watch.
Right.
But I mean, if I want to go back and watch, I do want to go back and watch those matches someday. I love Meiko Satomura. It would be so cool to see her be the one to have way more clout than anyone could imagine by being a no-name who wins the Rumble as far as main roster eyes are concerned. And then one more, and I'll leave it alone, but Nikita Lyons, another woman who's got a little bit of a rocket strap to her in NXT, has kind of hit sort of some speed bumps with her ongoing development, but screams a variety of different positive things. Among them, sure, sex appeal, but beyond that, young enough and green enough to grow into the kinds of roles that women like Bianca Belair have done after winning the Rumble, etc. So those were just a couple ones for me that I thought would be fun to pluck out and make winners out of nowhere. But I think it's really interesting, and kudos to your higher thinking using this. Yeah.
So we talked about people that we think could win, but really quick, let's just boil it down. Who do you want to win the Women's Royal Rumble?
Oh,
like in your heart, who would you want to see win?
Like we said, I think Rhea Ripley is truly the most deserving victorious candidate to this year. Absolutely. You?
Okay, yeah, I think that's the best overall pick. I don't know if it's who I'd want to win the most, just because I'm a simp for Asuka. So like I'm always down to see people get a push, but it seems like a weird choice this year. So unless she like re-debuts with a brand new gimmick and like does something really over the top, I think Rhea Ripley is the right choice and the one I'd want to see win.
I could see Asuka or her new version being number 2, like runner up. I want to see Asuka and Io Sky at a WrestleMania match, like curtain jerking.
Right.
That's what I want.
Okay.
So whatever path leads us to that, that's what my hope is for those two. But yeah, Rhea Ripley needs to be wrestling. Oh shit. Probably Bianca Belair, right? At WrestleMania.
That would be the better match, because if she challenges Charlotte's just going to go over.
Which we don't want. And they did it already with the NXT title on the line a few years ago. One of the notable losses that Rhea really does need to get to erasing from her resume with some major wins. And she's absolutely in the right place for it.
Yeah.
Shall we pivot to the dudes?
Yes. And I'm so glad we didn't talk about Lacey Evans a single time during that Women's Rumble talk. But let's talk about the Men's Rumble.
Yeah, man. Poor Lacey Evans. I don't know if it's all her fault.
Don't start talking about her. Don't start.
Well, then move the fuck on.
All right, who do you think is going to win the Men's Royal Rumble?
This is one of the hardest things in the world for me, because it's a great year for my imagination, because there are multiple avenues for my imagination has taken and gone, okay, I can live with that. The question you've worded though is, who do I think will win?
Yes,
and I have to admit that
going to win. Who do you think is the likely winner?
Even with everything we've slid around and everything we've pointed out and everything we've kind of circled and underlined, whether I like it or not, I really do think Cody Rhodes is going to win the Rumble. It's not what I want. It's far from what I want, honestly. But I just feel like it could all be a swerve to try to swerve and get us. And in the end, they're just going to put us right back on the path that has been prophesized. I'm not in love with it either. I've said it already. So what about you? Just what do you think? Who's going to win the Rumble?
I think the most likely pick is Kevin Owens.
Okay.
But only because, I guess, like in sort of a subverted way of like, he is the most likely pick who is not at the forefront of being the most over, I guess is the way to put it. Because the most hyped guy right now in the company is Sami Zayn. But
absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised if Sammy's not even in the Rumble.
Oh, talk about tone deaf. I'll be booing.
Has he mentioned, has any of the Bloodline mentioned entering the Royal Rumble at all?
So Roman said, I don't want to see your ass or your face Sammy until Saturday at the Rumble, where you'll face your final test.
Right.
And speculation goes a buzzle. Maybe Sammy's going to be last minute, like, special guest referee, and he gets to determine, many things in that match. We teased maybe Sammy's number one, right? In the Rumble.
So if I'm booking this Rumble, Roman Reigns is going to go to Sammy and say, you have one goal. Your one goal is that Solo Sikoa wins this Royal Rumble. And then we don't actually have to defend the title. Like, that's always the champions. We saw it with Evolution, but they had the 2 titles at the time. And he was like, oh, well, if Batista wins, you can just challenge for the SmackDown title, right, bud? Like, there's always like this idea of the giant heel faction trying to protect the title belt by having one of their members just win the Royal Rumble. Lesnar entered the Rumble in the same idea. So, like, if you run with a story like that, I could see it being, where he's involved. Other than that, it wouldn't surprise me if the Bloodline is just absent from the Rumble completely.
I think it would be a mistake of booking proportions.
It would be weird as fuck, wouldn't it?
It'd be pretty dumb. I think Sammy has to be in the Rumble so that we have a reason to enjoy the experience as fans. We're far too invested in Sammy. It's almost universal. He's Daniel Bryan this year. For many, I'm not the only fan who would love to see a Sami Zayn usurp the Bloodline storyline, get kicked off right there at the Rumble. Many are buzzing because Elimination Chambers in Montreal in February, that Sammy will challenge Roman at that time for the championship, meaning maybe he wins the Rumble but pushes up his title shot. More likely is that there's some sort of betrayal that happens during the evening and Roman just sets his crosshairs on him to put him out of his misery. And that's fine. That's fine if that's what they want to do. I think Sammy's work by itself has spoken for itself, and he's been the reason why the Bloodline has had a whole additional year of content that's been top-notch quality. He's been, we've sung his praises week in and week out. I could talk for hours about why Sami Zayn is one of the finest professional wrestlers of now, and has been arguably since I've become aware of him in 2012.
He is the perfect guy to do all of the tricks. He is the perfect character. He's the perfect performer to get out of the ring and not participate and hide under the ring and sneak in weapons and do all of the illegal stuff that we pop for, because it demonstrates a knowledge of the rule set. It demonstrates, that flexibility to understand that you can't be disqualified and you don't have to actually be in the ring, stuff like that. And so it would be a gross misuse to not have him featured prominently in this Royal Rumble. And yet, in my head, while he's like super likely to win it, he's also super likely to just be booked to do other stuff all night.
And, going back to what you were saying, just to touch on it, I did want to say he's also one of those few professional wrestlers who are legitimately intelligent enough as human beings to recognize we want to see something different, right? Mm-hmm. He does everything just a little bit different, and he finds a new way to do old shit. And we've seen a million street fights before, for example, but did we ever see what he and Johnny Knoxville did together this past WrestleMania? I challenge
he is really proud of that match.
You said you hated it?
I wasn't the biggest fan, no. I mean, it was a good idea for what they did. It just wasn't purely entertaining for me. That's all.
Well,
like if you're going to do a match with Johnny Knoxville, I 100% think you should bring out giant mousetraps and stuff. And they pulled it off well. It's just not what I want to watch.
Okay, well,
I don't want to watch Johnny Knoxville wrestle. That's,
Flavor of your wrestling aside, it was an extremely strong segment.
Right. They performed it well.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to say, Sammy is a treasure and has done everything he can possibly do to prove that he belongs in top of the card, territory. And if I think this is a great year for him, it doesn't necessarily mean he's winning the Rumble, but it's what I would love to see happen, just for the most direct way to challenge, Roman with the most crap on the line. But yeah, I feel like you have not made it clear though who you think will win this Rumble once and for all.
Yeah, as far as who I think is likely to win the Rumble, I could actually see Damian Priest being like a surprise pick. Now, I know I've clowned a lot about them never having surprise picks, and as I'm saying it, this doesn't feel great to put out there, but that would be like my surprise pick. Other than that, it's Kevin Owens as far as who I think will win the Rumble.
Okay, no, that's right. You did mention Kevin, who of course has the title match in the same night, and I'll tell you, it's like 50-50. Sometimes the title contestant gets to make it into the Rumble on top of losing.
Like if he loses and it'll depend on where the booking is, because I would not be surprised if it's the first match of the night, Kevin Owens gets screwed or whatever, and then he attacks somebody to take the, because it seems like a Kevin Owens move. It seems like the kind of thing that they would book his character to do, where he attacks somebody and replaces them and enters as number 28 or something, and he starts throwing out bloodline members.
That's probably the fate of Akira Tozawa, who has been one of the few characters who's been like, I just want to be in the Rumble. I just want to be in the Rumble. He's recently resurfaced and left his ninja gimmick to be, hopefully in the Rumble. And with all due respect, Sam, I don't know if I've ever made this clear to you specifically, but I'm a huge Akira Tozawa guy.
You do bring him up a lot more than other.
Dating back to CWC, man, I know that guy is a incredibly talented wrestler who is very entertaining, funny, charismatic, has a unique look. He's got a great jawline, if you don't mind me saying. He knows how to wrestle. He's very entertaining. There's no reason for a guy like that not to have more weight behind him, but he's also like 177 pounds soaking wet. So the likelihood is that Kevin could crush him and take a spot. You're absolutely right. And raise some eyebrows and kind of run the same gauntlet that Becky Lynch did in 2019. And I don't hate it. I mean, Kevin Owens is maybe fifth on my personal list of, boy, it sure would be nice if this person won the Rumble. And he was my pick last year, even though I think he, was in a last man standing match for the championship last year. And, I didn't have him in the Rumble at all, I don't think, eventually. But anyway, good pick. I love Kevin Owens to death. Another guy on the same level of Sami Zayn who can do anything he fucking wants in the wrestling ring and be believable and entertaining and oftentimes likable as hell. I love how he trolls around the audience when he's wrestling. I love that he's using the stunner. I love that he just seems like a real guy. Of course, he's got the physique that is so atypical to your everyday professional wrestler, but we've been making that point ever since he burst onto the scene. And it just has never felt like he's hit his ceiling. And a Rumble win would be a great part of helping him find that ceiling for sure.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Again, it feels so hard to get away from just Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, as far as likely winners go. I mean, there's a lot of people who I wouldn't be that surprised if they put it on, but for me, the three most prominent are Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes, and then Kevin Owens is like a potential third, because I can't really imagine who else that they'd put it on unless they really, really wanted a shocker out of left field, we're going to start fucking up the storylines. Because I mentioned Damian Priest because they have started to finally introduce the Bloodline and Judgment Day together.
Right.
And again, we talked about bringing Naomi back and Naomi being involved with the Bloodline to counteract the Rhea Ripley situation. That could be the buildup of their actual feud, right? Is one member of the Judgment Day gets to challenge Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? And then also, is he going to get the challenge for both titles? Like, have we unified these titles forever? Because he still carries around 2 titles, and I'm a huge fan of unified titles. I hate 2 title belts. It should be undisputed.
I think in my personal radar, I'm preferring these titles to remain unified, honestly, for a while. I think what they've been doing on Raw,
just
with all due respect,
one undisputed title.
Sure. I think what it's done is actually help the United States Championship on Raw to have a shit ton more prestige.
Yep.
Yeah. Seth, Bobby Lashley, and Theory have all worked really hard recently to ensure that feels like an important championship. And kudos to it. We need more of that effort. And I feel the same way about the tag team titles. I feel like keep them unified. Make this path to being a champion matter by just making it harder to be a champion. It seems blasphemous in a way, but it's not. So I think we're going to agree on that. And as far as your list, I mean, the only one that you can slide in there, because, let's just blow smoke up people's ass for a second and gas lamp. What if The Rock does show up and The Rock does win the Rumble?
Well, that's been good. This has been scheduled for on fall. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining.
Like, share, subscribe. We didn't hit our hard 2 hours yet. All I'm trying to say is he's the great one, the bloodline, the true head of the table. He's got a busy Hollywood schedule, and he's probably going to be president of the United States someday. But at the end of the day, it's still The Rock, and they did this whole thing, in people's minds. It's stuck with us. It's something that folks are begging, some folks anyway, are begging to see happen. Am I on that boat? No. I don't need to see The Rock wrestle at this stage of his life, least of all for the WWE Championship. It's just not necessary, but there's plenty of wrestling history that would just open up and wipe its canvases clean and beg for some fantastic literature if that's what they choose to do. Not saying it's going to happen.
If The Rock is the guy who destroys the bloodline, I will never watch WWE programming again. I'm putting it out there into the ethos. I'm recording it. If The Rock dismantles, now I'm not saying just beats Roman Reigns, but I'm saying if he actually causes the bloodline to splinter and break up within this year because he comes back and wins the Rumble and takes the title, whatever. If the bloodline breaks up because of The Rock, I will fucking never watch the product again. I will only watch Impact and AEW and New Japan because there are other wrestling companies.
And I think, Sam, it's your absolute prerogative to do whatever kind of boundary setting you need. Because I respect it. It would be shitting on too many stories. It'd be shitting on too many full-time wrestlers. It'd be shitting on too much time having passed since The Rock could legitimately be looked at as a pinnacle athlete, despite the way he literally looks. I respect where you're coming from. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm not saying it's what I want to have happen. I am gonna say that if you smell hits the fucking speakers and he's coming out, then I'm not going to do a little bit of oh wow, this is cool. But no, I don't think it's the right path forward, and no, I don't think it's going to happen. Just saying, guys.
Yeah, it's where would you even introduce The Rock with the whole bloodline stuff going on? What is he going to do? Show up and congratulate Roman for being a massive piece of shit for 2 years? It just doesn't. It doesn't. If The Rock came back as a full-on heel and was just shitty to everybody, I might change my mind. I don't see that ever happening. So, and even then, I still wouldn't find it entertaining. I would just be happy that they went that direction. So, but who do you want to win? That's my favorite question, because we always have who do you expect to win, and it's very easy to, with all the fucking dirt sheets and shit like that. It's. It's very easy to think of who is WWE gonna pick, but who do you pick? Who do you want to win?
All the pieces falling into place. There's so many different ways certain guys can fit into satisfying storylines moving forward coming out of the Rumble. And there's very few places for Cody Rhodes to fit in my mind right now, except across the ring from the champion at WrestleMania. So his is the hardest one to justify his loss for, at least immediately. You know what I mean? Because he's had so little storytelling outside of that. But my heart and my soul, I've been saying it for weeks, and I would be foolish to not stand by myself. I would love to see Sami Zayn win this Rumble. I've been a Sami fan since 2012 when he Blue Thunder bombed his way into title contention in NXT, beating guys like Adrian Neville to get there. I just love Sami right now for everything he's done to help us feel so much more than what wrestling typically makes you feel. He's been putting on performances in conjunction with the rest of the bloodline, but truly he's been the centerpiece of these performances with just the absolute commitment and poise he portrays while responding to every little thing, every up and down in this storyline. Masterful, truly masterful. So when it comes to elevating the art form and the storytelling within it, Sami's been the poster child of it, and maybe the best in, like, I don't know, since Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho did the List storyline. Does that sound right to you? Because it feels right to me.
It feels right.
I love Sami Zayn for what he's done this year. I would love to see him get a humongous accolade and cement his place amongst main eventers legitimately. And I think they've done a great job of brushstroking their way into that direction. He almost had Kevin Owens beat, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like he's being played off as a lower guy anymore. He's being treated with respect in the ring, and he's made so many matches so much better. The War Games match just a few months ago comes to mind, as that was his match too. So, like, let's just give him this chance to make WrestleMania's main event truly goosebump worthy, as I'm having them right now. I want to see Sami Zayn win this thing. I just don't trust WWE to do what I want.
True. And in that vein, the person I want to see win the Rumble is, of course, Dolph Ziggler. But since that's not a real fucking pick, I would love to see Seth Rollins win, because I think that Seth Rollins could do amazing work with Sami Zayn. I think he could bring out the best in Roman Reigns. And I think Seth Rollins could pull off like a heel versus heel sort of storyline. Now, if Seth did win, they'd almost certainly make him like babyface style, and they probably wouldn't go full heel versus heel for the fucking WrestleMania main event.
Right.
But Seth would be the best pick if A, you wanted to turn it into a triple threat for some reason. Mm-hmm. B, he's the best option I think they have at having good promos leading up to WrestleMania. And C, I think that when it comes to like big main event stars who will capitalize on that WrestleMania match, dude, Seth Rollins has brought out the best in so many people. He has made every match at WrestleMania seem like it's worth watching. He seems like a guy who really steps up to the plate when it matters. And like, this is kind of a common thing in WWE, where guys who can wrestle really well just don't for like 90 days out of a year. But like all the pay-per-view spots that they do are just amazing. So like, you know, it's if you're going to have 10 matches, 10 weeks out of 100 fucking shows that they do every year, like Seth Rollins is going to cash in really big at a WrestleMania. So I think that's who I want to win the most, if only because I think the Sami Zayn bloodline storyline is just going so well. Like, there's no reason to I don't think there's a reason to end it just yet. I think you have plenty of time between now and WrestleMania to unravel that thread.
I agree with you. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over again with Royal Rumble feeling like the final approach to WrestleMania, but is honestly just the beginning in many cases. Mm. That's where guys like, Randy Orton gets to sneak into the triple threat that includes Rey and Kurt Angle for the title, right?
I was just about to say, what do you think, really quick, what do you think the likelihood of it becoming a triple threat this year is?
Oh, God.
I think it's pretty good.
For Roman's title?
I think it's pretty good for one specific reason. If you wanted to break up the titles, they could do, and they've only done this like once before, I think.
Oh, are you
with
talking
mid-card
about the 2
titles.
matches one night?
No, I'm talking
the Chris
triple
Jericho.
threat. I'm talking
Yeah.
triple threat, 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah.
The people who get the first fall is for one title, the second fall is for another title.
Yeah, I think Benoit, Jericho, and Kurt did that way back, right?
Yep, and the
I love
champ
that.
lost both titles to 2 different people and wasn't involved. Like, I
Right
think
right there. Such a unique idea, such a fun idea, such a rarely done idea, right? We knew exactly when it was used last, and it was like 25 years ago, right?
And it was
So-
3 amazing performers who work well together. Who
Exactly.
did a great job.
Yeah, I think that would be really fun to see. So you're thinking a Roman, Sammy, Seth triple threat?
Or like Roman, Kevin, and Sammy, because the whole idea is like, does he actually? Whose side is he really on? Like, I could see them doing something like that.
Then do a fatal 4-way, same thing. It's still unprecedented. Nobody's done it
Right.
before. Do a fatal 4-way. Have Seth in the history between him and Roman in there. Have Kevin in the history with Sammy, and have Sammy in his history with Roman. It all makes sense.
It's a little.
That would
messy.
be a lot of fun.
It's a little messy, to have your WrestleMania main event with all this stuff going on, but we've had enough WrestleMania triple threats at this point that we can just add one extra layer to it to make it seem special, especially if you want to break up the titles, which again, I'd like in my head, the perfect scenario is Seth Rollins wins, they have a one-on-one, and it's for the undisputed title, and we keep 2 belts in the same place. But if you really want to spice it up and go over the top and make it seem crazy and special and really get eyes on the product, I think you make it a triple threat and the belts can be lost interchangeably.
And it wouldn't. You could still protect Roman, as brilliant and unnecessary as it may feel. You could have Roman not get pinned and lose both titles.
Exactly, which is how they did it. Which is one of the reasons they did it last time.
And then have a big year of Roman getting it back and making everybody pay, whatever we may need to do. But it could be a really fun way forward that helps no one look especially weak and helps elevate guys like Seth Sammy and Kevin, because I don't know about you, but I bet most of the WWE universe doesn't quite have them on the same in-ring plateau as Seth and Roman, right? They're close, but not quite there. But having this kind of thing happen could truly help really cement them to the top. I mean, there's a million different ways they could intelligently try to protect guys, yet still change the course of history completely. And it could truly happen. I think it has potential to be a special Rumble, which we need. We need because we love this product and I love this match, and I want to get back to into believing it can be such an incredible night for entertainment. I'm hoping that some of the things we discussed tonight come to pass, and it's just not some stupid phone it in result like a returning Randy Orton winning number 3.
Right. Absolutely. But that's just our takes. What do you guys think down in the comments below? Who do you think is going to win? But more importantly, who do you want to win these Royal Rumbles? Because it's the fans that they're supposed to listen to. And when it comes to Royal Rumbles, it seems to be the time when they are the most tone deaf out of any other part of the year. So I'm very curious. And let us know, how much Rumble hype has there been? This seems like the least hyped Rumble maybe ever, maybe of all time. Maybe that's us. Maybe it's the way media is today and how we consume media. And maybe it's just WWE themselves is so focused on these great storylines that they've been telling with really specific characters that the Rumble really does seem like an afterthought. So all I know is that after this weekend, the landscape of wrestling will be changed, at least in some way. Unless Kevin Owens wins the Rumble, I guess, then we're back to square one.
I mean, not in my mind. It's still something to celebrate, but I suppose you don't need me to chime in. Keep going.
Well, I just mean as far as the landscape goes, it'll still just be Kevin versus Roman. So Hopefully that feud can actually come to an end, or at least be spiced up in some way that it seems interesting. But I think that's going to do it for us this week, guys. Hopefully this comes out to you on Wednesday, and hopefully by next Wednesday we have both watched the Rumble, watched the Fallout on Raw, and we will have more wrestling to talk about.
Yeah, I can't wait to come back at you guys with more thoughts, more considerations, more excitement. Praying that the Royal Rumble leaves us with that this time instead of what we've had, say, last year. Super deflated. But thanks for the chat tonight, Sam. Scheduled for one fall has been counted out. 1, 2, 3. Ring the bell, and we'll see y'all next week.
See you guys next week. Peace out.